The large courtroom on Nexus Station hummed with the soft noises of many different alien species. The room was circular with high ceilings and walls that looked like they were made of light. Judge Theron Maxwell sat at a raised desk at the front. He was a human man in his 50s, with grey hair at his temples and deep lines around his eyes. His black judge's robe had small blue lights running along the edges, marking him as a representative of Earth's North American Union. Judge Maxwell looked down at his screen, reviewing the case before him. The Nexus Station served as a meeting point for 27 different intelligent species, and his job was to settle disputes using the galactic common law. Humans had only joined the galactic community 30 years ago, but they had quickly earned respect for their adaptability and sense of fairness. Next case, called out the court AI in 27 different languages at once. Research Violation 7729B, Unauthorized Medical Testing Protocols. The doors at the back of the courtroom slid open. A tall black woman with short, natural hair walked confidently toward the center of the room. She wore the blue and silver uniform of the Galactic Medical Corps, with several achievement pins on her collar. The crowd murmured as she passed. Some aliens leaned forward with interest, their various appendages twitching. "Dr. Nia Williams," Judge Maxwell said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "You stand accused of violating Section 12 of the Medical Research Act by conducting unauthorized cross-species medical procedures. How do you plead?" Dr. Williams stood straight, her eyes meeting the judge's without fear. "Not guilty by reason of necessity, Your Honor." A ripple of clicks and whistles passed through the alien observers. The plea was uncommon. "Explain, Judge," Maxwell said simply. His reputation for fairness was matched only by his strict adherence to the letter of the law. "The patient was dying," Dr. Williams said. "A young Vexillian suffering from neural collapse. The approved protocols would have taken too long. I used a modified human stem cell technique that saved his life." A tall, insect-like being rose from the prosecution table. Ambassador Creeks of the Medical Ethics Committee clicked his mandibles before speaking. The technique was not approved for cross-species use. It could have caused further harm. "That is why we have protocols." Dr. Williams didn't back down. "With all due respect, Ambassador, I've spent 15 years studying comparative xenobiology. The risk was minimal, and the child would have died waiting for approval." Judge Maxwell studied both of them carefully. The law was clear on this matter. All medical procedures required testing and approval before they could be used across species. But humans had brought something different to the galactic community. They often questioned rules that other species followed without thinking. "The evidence shows that the procedure was successful," Maxwell noted, looking at his screen. "But that does not change the fact that you broke the law, Dr. Williams." "Sometimes the law needs to catch up to necessity, Your Honor," she replied. Maxwell's eyebrows rose slightly. Few would dare to speak so boldly in his courtroom. He admired her courage, but the law was the law. "The court finds you guilty of violating Section 12, he announced. "You are fined 50,000 credits, and your research privileges are restricted for 6 months. The fine was heavy, about 2 years' salary for most medical researchers. Several gasps came from the human section of the audience. Dr. Williams showed no reaction except for a slight tightening of her jaw. "I understand, Your Honor. However," Maxwell continued, "I will note in the record that your actions did save a life and that the Medical Ethics Committee might benefit from reviewing their approval timelines for emergency procedures." Ambassador Creex's antennae twitched in surprise, but he said nothing. As Dr. Williams turned to leave, Judge Maxwell noticed something unusual about her. Most people showed anger, fear, or despair after such a ruling, but the doctor's face held a quiet dignity that caught his attention. She nodded respectfully before walking out, head held high. "Court is adjourned for the midday meal," Maxwell announced. The room began to empty as various species filed out through the main doors. As he gathered his notes, Maxwell couldn't help but wonder about Dr. Williams. There had been something familiar about her, though he couldn't place it. With thousands of humans now living and working throughout the galaxy, it was hard to keep track. Still, the encounter left him with a strange feeling that their paths had crossed before. Little did he know that their connection was far closer than he could imagine, and that in just a few days His carefully ordered world would be turned upside down when he discovered exactly who Nia Williams was to his family and to his half-Andarian daughter. The grand ballroom of the Nexus Diplomatic Center sparkled with floating light orbs in a rainbow of colors. Judge Theron Maxwell stood uncomfortably in his formal attire, a deep blue suit with silver trimming that marked his judicial position. He preferred his courtroom to these diplomatic functions, but attendance was expected for someone of his rank. Various alien diplomats mingled throughout the space. A group of tall, willowy Andarians with their characteristic silvery skin clustered near the refreshment area. Their species had been among the first to form peaceful relations with humans when Earth joined the Galactic Alliance. "Father," a voice called out from across the room. Maxwell turned to see his 17-year-old daughter Elise making her way through the crowd. She had her mother's Andarian silver-toned skin and height, but Maxwell's dark eyes and hair. As one of the first human Andarian children to survive infancy, Elise was something of a celebrity on Nexus Station. "I've been looking everywhere for you," Elise said, embracing him. "There's someone I want you to meet." "Well, re-meet, actually." Maxwell raised an eyebrow. "Re-meet? Yes. My godmother is here. She just told me she had to appear in your court earlier this week, but she didn't get a chance to say hello properly." Before Maxwell could ask who she meant, Elise was already pulling him through the crowd. They stopped in front of a small group of human and alien medical officers. Among them stood Dr. Nia Williams, the researcher he had fined heavily just 3 days ago. The recognition hit him like a punch to the stomach. Dr. Williams turned and smiled warmly at Elise. Then her eyes met Maxwell's, and her smile faltered. "Slightly. Judge Maxwell," she said with a polite nod. "Dr. Williams." His voice sounded strained even to his own ears. Elise looked between them, confused. "You two know each other?" "Your father presided over my case this week," Dr. Williams explained, gently. "I violated some research protocols." "Wait," Maxwell said, his mind struggling to catch up. "You're Elise's godmother. How is that possible?" Dr. Williams squared her shoulders. "Perhaps we should speak privately, Your Honor." They moved to a quiet corner of the ballroom. Elise joined them, looking concerned. "You really don't remember me, do you?" Dr. Williams asked quietly. Maxwell studied her face. There was something familiar beyond their recent courtroom encounter, but he couldn't place it. 10 years ago," she continued, "I was a junior medical officer on the first human Andarian medical exchange. Your wife Lena was 8 months pregnant with Elise when complications arose." The memories suddenly rushed back. Maxwell's wife had nearly died during childbirth. The Andarian doctors hadn't understood human physiology well enough to help, and the human doctors knew little about Andarian births. "You were the doctor who saved them," he whispered. Dr. Williams nodded. "I developed an emergency treatment that bridged the gap between our physiologies. That's how I became interested in cross-species medicine in the first place. And Lena made you Elise's godmother before she passed," Maxwell finished. His wife had died of an unrelated illness when Elise was 7, but he remembered her speaking highly of the doctor who saved their daughter. "The child I helped this week," Dr. Williams said softly, "was a Vexillian-Terran hybrid. His neural patterns were shutting down in a way very similar to what Elise experienced. I couldn't watch another child die while waiting for bureaucratic approval." Elise's eyes widened. "Is that why you were in court? For saving someone like me?" Maxwell felt a weight settle in his chest. The law was clear, but now the human element, the reason behind the violation, stood before him in the form of his own daughter. "The law doesn't account for exceptions," he said, more to himself than to them. "But maybe it should," Dr. Williams replied. "Humanity has always understood that rules sometimes need flexibility when lives are at stake." Maxwell looked at his daughter, then back at the doctor who had saved her life a decade ago. The same doctor he had just punished for saving another child using similar methods. "I need to know more about your research," he said finally. "Not as a judge, but as a father." Dr. Williams smiled. "I'd be happy to show you. The medical bay is quiet at this hour." As the three of them left the diplomatic function together, Maxwell felt the foundations of his carefully ordered worldview beginning to shift. The galaxy operated on strict rules and regulations. But humanity had always brought something different to the table. Compassion that sometimes transcended the letter of the law. What he would discover in Dr. Williams' lab would challenge everything. He thought he knew about justice and mercy in a universe of diverse species trying to coexist under a single set of laws. The secure doors of Medical Research Lab 7 slid open with a soft hiss. Judge Maxwell followed Dr. Williams through the entry, glancing nervously over his shoulder. He wasn't supposed to be here, not as a judge investigating an active case, but as a father seeking answers. He felt compelled to understand. "This is where you conducted the unauthorized procedure?" Maxwell asked, keeping his voice low despite the empty lab. Dr. Williams nodded. "This is my primary research space. The Galactic Medical Corps gives me some flexibility because of my specialized knowledge." She gestured toward a large holographic display in the center of the room. "Computer, show Project Harmony." The air filled with floating three-dimensional images, cellular structures, DNA strands, and neural patterns, all labeled with technical terms in multiple languages. "What am I looking at?" Maxwell asked. "The fundamental connections between species," Dr. Williams said, her voice filled with passion. "Despite evolving on different worlds, all intelligent life in our galaxy shares certain biological patterns. My research focuses on those connections." She waved her hand, and the display zoomed in on what looked like nerve cells. Human neural cells are remarkably adaptable. They can form connections with cells from other species in ways that no other species cells can. That's what saved Elise when she was born. My treatment used modified human stem cells to bridge the gap between human and Andarian neural patterns. Maxwell studied the display with newfound interest. "And the Vexillian child?" "Similar. Issue different species." Dr. Williams moved to another station and pulled up medical files. "Vexillians have a triple helix neural structure. When they hybridize with humans, sometimes the neural patterns can't establish proper connections. The child was dying because his brain couldn't communicate with itself." A door at the far end of the lab opened, and several beings entered. Maxwell recognized representatives from at least 5 different species: a hovering Traxian physician, an 8-limbed Octavian, researcher, a burly Danebian surgeon, and 2 others he couldn't immediately identify. They stopped short when they saw Maxwell. "It's all right," Dr. Williams assured them. "Judge Maxwell is here, unofficially." A tall reptilian being stepped forward. "I am Dr. Sith of the Sauron Medical Academy. Your daughter's case study inspired my own work with human Sauron genetic compatibility." "My daughter's case study?" Maxwell looked at Dr. Williams questioningly. "With Lena's permission, I published my findings after saving Elise," she explained. "It became the foundation for cross-species medical treatments throughout the quadrant." The Octavian researcher moved closer, its skin shifting colors as it spoke. "Dr. Williams has gathered us from across the galaxy, former enemies working together because of what humans have taught us about biological connections." Maxwell felt overwhelmed. "But the law clearly states, the law was written before we understood these possibilities," Dr. Williams interrupted gently. "Before humans joined the galactic community, most species saw their biological differences as barriers. Your people showed us that differences can become strengths when properly connected." She pulled up another file on the display. "This is the Vexillian child I treated. His name is Toril. He would have died waiting for official approval of my treatment." The image showed a small child with scaled skin and large eyes, smiling weakly from a medical bed. "And how is he now?" Dr. Williams smiled. "See for yourself." She swiped to a more recent image, the same child now running through a park on the station, his scales gleaming with health. Maxwell sat heavily on a nearby stool. "I've spent my career upholding the law exactly as written. The Galactic Council values consistency above all else. Perhaps that's why humans have brought such change," Dr. Sith suggested. "Your species understands that true justice requires both consistency and compassion." A soft alarm sounded from Dr. Williams' communicator. "Emergency in Medical Bay 3, announced the station AI. "Cross-species contamination detected in diplomatic delegation." Dr. Williams looked at her team. "We need to move." Then she turned to Maxwell. "You should go. If anyone discovers you've been here, I'm coming with you, Maxwell said, surprising himself as much as her. I need to see what you do. As they hurried toward the emergency, Maxwell felt torn between his duty as a judge and his growing understanding as a father. The law was clear, but so was the evidence before his eyes. Dr. Williams was saving lives that would otherwise be lost. The galaxy had rules for good reasons, but perhaps humanity's greatest contribution wasn't technology or culture, but something more fundamental, the ability to see connections where others saw only differences. What awaited them in Medical Bay 3 would force Maxwell to choose between upholding the letter of the law and embracing its spirit, a choice that could change the course of galactic medicine forever. Medical Bay 3 was in chaos when Judge Maxwell and Dr. Williams arrived. The room was filled with medical staff rushing between beds that held 7 different alien diplomats. The air smelled sharp with disinfectant and unfamiliar medications. "What happened?" Dr. Williams asked, grabbing a medical scanner from a nearby table. A flustered human nurse looked up from monitoring vital signs. The Centaurian delegation hosted a unity dinner. Something in the food caused a severe reaction across multiple species. "We've got a Traxian ambassador, 2 Vexillians, a Denebian trade minister, and 3 Octavians all showing similar symptoms." Maxwell watched as Dr. Williams moved quickly to the first patient, a blue-skinned Traxian whose breathing sounded labored and raspy. "Respiratory distress, cellular breakdown at the molecular level," she muttered, studying her scanner. "This looks like a reaction to polymerized proteins." The station's chief medical officer, Dr. Voss, an older human with a stern face, approached them. His eyes narrowed when he saw Maxwell. Judge Maxwell. "This is a restricted medical emergency." Then he noticed Dr. Williams. "And Dr. Williams, your research privileges are restricted. You shouldn't be here." Before Maxwell could respond, one of the Octavian patients convulsed violently, its skin flashing warning colors of bright red and yellow. "We're losing her," called out an Andarian nurse. Dr. Voss hesitated only a moment before turning to Dr. Williams. "What would you do?" "Their symptoms are similar, but their biologies are completely different," she said, thinking quickly. "This has to be targeting something they all share despite their differences." She rushed to a console and pulled up biological data on all 7 species. There, the gamma receptor sites. They're present in all these species but structured differently. A compound that binds to one species' gamma receptors would react unpredictably with another's. "Standard protocol calls for species-specific treatments," Dr. Voss said, sounding defeated. "We'd need to stabilize each patient separately, but we don't have time." The Octavians' life signs were dropping rapidly. 2 other patients had begun showing the same critical symptoms. Dr. Williams looked at Maxwell, her eyes asking a silent question. They both knew what she wanted to try, an unauthorized cross-species treatment that would violate the very laws he had used to fine her days ago. "The research restriction is still in effect," Dr. Voss reminded them. "I can't authorize any experimental treatments without approval from the Medical Ethics Committee." "That would take hours," Dr. Williams argued. "These patients don't have hours." All eyes turned to Judge Maxwell. As the highest-ranking judicial officer present, he had the authority to temporarily suspend the restrictions in an emergency. Maxwell thought of the law, clear, orderly, designed to prevent chaos across a galaxy of different beings. But he also thought of his daughter, alive because Dr. Williams had once broken those same rules. "As acting judicial authority on Nexus Station," Maxwell said, his voice steady, "I hereby grant emergency authorization for Dr. Williams to implement whatever treatment she deems necessary to save these patients." Dr. Williams didn't waste a second. "I need a neural stabilizer and human stem cell samples, modified according to Protocol H7. As her team rushed to prepare the treatment, Dr. Williams explained quickly, "The human stem cells can act as universal translators between different biological systems. They'll bind to the toxin regardless of which species' receptors are affected." Maxwell watched as she moved from bed to bed, injecting each patient with a slightly modified version of the same base treatment. Within minutes, the Octavians' colors began to stabilize. The Traxians' breathing eased. One by one, the patients stabilized. The emergency room staff looked on in amazement as 7 different species responded to essentially the same treatment, something the galactic medical community had long believed impossible. Hours later, as the crisis passed, Dr. Voss approached Maxwell and Dr. Williams. "That was remarkable," he admitted, "but it was also completely outside established protocol." "Sometimes protocols need to evolve," Maxwell said, surprising himself with his words, "just as species do." Dr. Williams smiled. "Human history is full of moments when we had to choose between following rules and saving lives. We usually choose lives." As they left Medical Bay 3, Maxwell knew he had reached a turning point in his career and his understanding of justice. The law existed to protect life and promote harmony, but sometimes achieving those goals meant recognizing when the law itself needed to change. "I think," he said quietly to Dr. Williams, "it's time I spoke to the Galactic Council about your research." The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Alliance stretched in a perfect circle, with tiered seating rising high above the central speaking platform. Representatives from 27 different species filled the seats, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of galactic diversity. Judge Theron Maxwell stood at the center, his judicial robes replaced by formal diplomatic attire. "Esteemed members of the Council," Maxwell began, his voice steady despite his nervousness, "I come before you today to propose a reform to our medical research protocols." The chamber quieted. It was unusual for a human judge to address the full council, especially one proposing changes to established galactic law. 3 standard weeks ago, I fined Dr. Nia Williams for violating Section 12 of the Medical Research Act, Maxwell continued. Today, I am asking this council to consider what I now call the Williams Protocol, a framework for necessary exceptions to our current medical research restrictions. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. In the gallery above, Dr. Williams sat with Elise beside her. Both women watched intently as Maxwell activated the central holographic display. The recent diplomatic crisis demonstrated something our current laws fail to recognize: that human medical techniques offer unique benefits because of our species' unusual biological adaptability. The display showed footage from Medical Bay 3, where Dr. Williams' treatment had saved 7 diplomats from different species simultaneously. "For millions of years, your civilizations evolved separately," Maxwell said. "Your medical systems were designed for single species, but humans evolved on a planet with unusual biological diversity. Our cells can adapt and connect in ways yours cannot." The senior counselor of the Traxians, whose ambassador had been among those saved, leaned forward. "Judge Maxwell, are you suggesting we allow unregulated human medical experimentation?" "No, senior counselor. I am suggesting a controlled exception process for emergency situations and for research with demonstrated safety margins." Maxwell gestured, and the display changed to show a detailed proposal. The Williams Protocol would create a special division for cross-species medical innovation, with streamlined approval processes and appropriate safeguards. Ambassador Creix, who had prosecuted Dr. Williams weeks earlier, clicked his mandibles in disagreement. "This undermines centuries of careful regulation." "With respect, Ambassador," Maxwell replied, "sometimes our laws must evolve as our understanding does." The chamber fell silent as Maxwell shared memories from 15 years ago, his wife's difficult pregnancy, the complications that nearly killed both mother and child, and Dr. Williams' innovative treatment that saved his daughter's life. "Dr. Williams published her findings after saving my daughter," he said. "That research has since saved thousands of lives across the galaxy, but under our current laws, that research would never have been permitted in the first place." In the tight gallery, Elise squeezed Dr. Williams's hand. The doctor's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Humanity has brought many things to the galactic community," Maxwell continued. "Our technology, our art, our cultures. But perhaps our greatest contribution is our understanding that rules must sometimes bend when lives hang in the balance." The Council debated for hours. Some species supported the proposal immediately. Others raised concerns about safety and precedent. Through it all, Maxwell stood firm, answering questions with the same careful precision he had once reserved for upholding. The law without question. When the final vote came, the Williams Protocol passed by a narrow margin. Later, in a small celebration in Maxwell's quarters, he raised a glass with Dr. Williams and Elise. "I have something for you," he said, handing Dr. Williams an official document. "The council agreed to commute your fine. Instead, they want you to head the new cross-species medical innovation division." Dr. Williams stared at the document in disbelief. "I never expected this." "Neither did I," Maxwell admitted. "I've spent my career believing that justice meant applying the law exactly as written. You helped me see that true justice requires understanding the spirit behind the law as well." Elise smiled at them both. "Mom would be proud of you both." As they looked out the viewport at the stars beyond Nexus Station, Maxwell reflected on how much had changed in just a few weeks. The galaxy was vast and diverse, filled with species who had evolved in isolation for millions of years. Bringing them together under one set of laws had always been challenging. Perhaps that was humanity's unique gift to the galactic community, not just their adaptable biology, but their adaptable thinking. The ability to see beyond rules to principles, beyond differences to connections. As the new head of the Williams Protocol Division, Dr. Nia Williams would help forge those connections, and Judge Theron Maxwell would ensure that the law served life rather than limiting it, a uniquely human balance that was quickly becoming one of Earth's most valuable exports to the stars.